Guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I find it so weird saying that because the only time I ever actually say welcome back to my YouTube channel is in my day-to-day life. Like, I'll just be in my bedroom doing my makeup, speaking to no one, and I'll be like, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we're using this. Um and yeah, so here we actually are on my YouTube channel. Welcome back. So today we're going to be doing a yes, no, maybe for all of the physical books that I have in my room that I've read. So these are all my physical books here that I've read. Obviously this isn't all of them, but these are just the ones that I keep in my room. I have quite a small room, so I probably have a lot of other books like in the garage and whatnot. So let's dive right into it. First one, In at the Deep End by Kate Davies. So this book is about Julia, who has abstained from sex for 3 years, not on purpose, and ends up having a one night stand, and then is finding that maybe it's not that she doesn't like sex, maybe it's that she doesn't like sex with men. And this is Julia's journey into discovering what she actually likes. She finds things out about herself, her personality, her friends, and her sexuality. It's it's a good message. It is a good book to read, I think, if you're struggling with your sexuality or if you're a woman who thinks maybe she's just not getting what she should be getting out of sex. This for me is a maybe. I did like this book. I thought it was very good. It just took me quite a while to actually read it. Like, it wasn't like one of those ones where you like can't put it down. Do you know what I mean? So for me, it was just like I'm quite a quick reader normally, and this one just took me ages to kind of get through. But I still think it was a good book. So this one's a maybe, we'll say. Book number two, Beach Read by Emily Henry. Now, everyone and their mother has read this book, so I'm sure we all know what it's about. But yeah, it's about January and Gus, and they meet on the beach. It's a rom-com vibe. Anyway, this is a yes for me. I'm fairly certain this, and if it's not this one, it's one of her other ones, is getting turned into a movie. I don't know whether it's this one. It might be one of her other books. But anyway, this one is a yes, I will say. Does live up to the hype. Was a very cute little romance book. Book three. We've got Magnolia Parks Into the Dark. Now, this is the only Magnolia Parks book that I have the physical copy of. So obviously, I'm not just talking about this one because this is like the most recent book in the series, and there's like five, I think. So, talking about this, we are also talking about the first one and the rest of the series. This is a big fat yes. YES, yes, capital everything. So Magnolia Parks is about this young woman called Magnolia Parks. So it's kind of like Gossip Girl, but that instead of being teenagers, they're all in their kind of early to mid 20s, and it's set in London instead of New York. So it's kind of about the elite Nepo babies. So it's this whole friends group of like rich kids who all kind of grew up together, and all their parents are either rich and or famous. And Magnolia Parks, she's the main character. I absolutely adore Magnolia. I think she's so funny. And this whole series is about all these rich young men and women, and it's about them going through their journeys of like romance, friendship, finding things out about themselves, having all these things happen to them, and big fat yes. I love these books. I think they're so good. And this one is a chunky one, mind you, and I genuinely could not put it down. So big fat yes to this, absolutely. Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. Oh, this one's a yes. This one is a yes. I read this book during the summer, actually, when I was on holiday, because obviously it's just the most holiday read ever. So I literally read it in like a day while I was on holiday. I loved this book. So this book is about this guy Justin who has a curse where everyone he seems to date once he breaks up with them or they break up with him, once they split, that person then goes and finds their soulmate. So Justin's never finding his soulmate because he's the person women have to get with before they find their soulmate. So Justin posts on Reddit about this curse and is like asking for advice. And basically, this woman, Emma, sees his Reddit post and she's a traveling nurse and she's like, hang on, exactly the same thing happens to me. So they figure that if they date each other, that will cancel out the curse. And then once they split up, they will find their soulmates. So they both agree to date each other just for the summer. They come up with like a list of rules of things that they have to do that have happened in all their previous relationships when the people have found their soulmates. They have to go on like X amount of dates, they have to do this, this, and that. Very good. Very, very good. Loved this one. It was like a cutesy summer read, super romantic, but there's also some other kind of little heavy themes going on in here, like things with parents and like familial issues. So love this book. Yeah, I couldn't put it down. I literally read it in about a day. So big fat yes. I will say I am such like an optimistic person, and I remember once I was having a chat with my mom about some movie and I was like, oh my god, I love that movie. And my mom said to me, like, Alex, have you ever watched a movie that you didn't like? And honestly, I could not think of a single one. And like, that's not me saying there aren't bad movies out there. Obviously, there are bad movies. But for some reason, when she asked me that, I was just like, do you know what? Now that you've asked me that, I can't think of one movie that I watched and went, ugh, I hated that. So I am just a very optimistic person. So I maybe say I'm saying too many yeses and not enough nos and maybes. But you know, there's worse issues to have. Sorry, I'm actually molting. There's worse issues to have than being too optimistic. So sue me. Um, but I will just say I think bad movies are funny. They're just funny. Like you know when they're not meant to be bad, they're actually trying to be good and they're just so poorly executed. You're just like, this is a bad movie. That's just funny. So then I walk out of the movie and I'm like, that was so funny. Love that. Anyway, next book, Fallen by Lauren Kate. Now this series I only finished recently. There are five. Oh yeah, it's on the back of the book, yeah. There's 5 books in this series. Um However, one of the 5 books, there's 2 kind of novellas, maybe you'd call them. Well, one of them's a little bit too long to be a novella. But anyway, so there's actually 4 books in this series with these characters. And then one of the side characters kind of gets his own book that's a little bit shorter. And I read that one as well. That one was called Unforgiven. That was a very good one. Anyway, so Fallen, this is about this girl, Luce, who gets sent to this kind of reform school for badly behaved teens. So it's basically like a fire at her school, and something ends up happening to one of her old classmates, and Luce ends up getting the blame, even though she's insistent that it wasn't her fault. But she's also kind of guilty, feels guilty about it. So Luce gets sent to this reform school, Swords and Cross, and she meets Daniel, and she's inexplicably drawn to Daniel. She doesn't know why, she can't explain it, but there's just something about him. And without giving too much away, this is a romance. This whole thing centers around Luce and Daniel. This series is about Luce finding out who she is, kind of her destiny, and her connection with Daniel, finding out more about that, why she's drawn to him, if and why he's drawn to her. And I did really enjoy this series. I did. However, I will say, for like the main storyline, with there being 4 books, it could have been a little bit shorter. I found like maybe the 3rd book was like a little bit repetitive. However, the last book that kind of wraps up this storyline, like book 4, is called Rapture, and oh my god, I loved the last book in the series. So I would recommend this series. It is a good series. Just strap in because there's 4 books. But yeah, so this is a yes, a tentative yes, depending on what your kind of taste is. But I did really enjoy this series.
And my mic stopped working, so that's like 10 minutes and like 4 books that I have to redo. Anyway, The Darkest Minds by Alexandra Bracken. I loved this book when I was like 12 or 13. It's very much dystopian, very much of the Hunger Games Divergent Maze Runner vibe, and they did make a movie out of it, and actually Amanda Stenberg, who played Rue in the Hunger Games, she plays Ruby, the main character, in the movie, and the movie kind of flopped and they never made the rest of the series a movie. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the movie. I thought they should have made another one, but anyway, they decided not to for whatever reason. So, The Darkest Minds is about Ruby, who is 16, and she was hit with a virus that hit America and only affected the children. So, when you get hit with the virus, you then gain an ability. So, you become a colour, you become a red, an orange, a yellow, a green, or a blue. And each one has a different power. So you can be like telekinetic, you can control fire, you can control minds, you can control electricity, or you can have super intelligence. If you are dangerous, if you're a red or an orange, you can control minds or stop fires. You get taken away. And what happened with this virus is that when it hit, Ruby was only a kid, and it killed like loads and loads of children, and then the few children that did survive had those abilities. And Ruby is mind control, so she has mind control, and obviously when you first get your gift, you don't know how to use it, you don't know how to control it, and Ruby didn't, and she was just a kid, and she unfortunately wiped her mum and dad's minds so that they forgot about her, and she didn't mean to. So she kind of woke up in the morning and her parents had forgotten who she was and were like, why are you in our house? Which is super sad. So basically, most of the children died. Ruby was like 10 or 9 when it first hit, and her friend Grace was like the first one to die, so they were just kids in school and Grace just dropped dead, and then all these other kids started dying, and this whole virus basically went all over America. And so the American government started distributing flyers and doing news cycles being like how to recognize the signs if your child has this virus, because the ones who survived had a gift and the American government was scared of them. They were scared of the power that these kids would hold, because obviously it's dangerous, but also because the American government wants to be the only ones with the power. And so they started saying, if your kids, displaying any of these symptoms, register them on this website, we'll come and pick them up, or we'll tell you what hospital to take them to. We're opening treatment facilities for the children, and these treatment facilities were basically camps where the children will be kept hostage, made to work. So she ended up getting taken to one of the camps, and this whole series is basically Ruby's journey about trying to escape, trying to survive, meeting people along the way, trying to figure out how they're going to ever be free again, be free to be children, be free to live their lives and not grow old and die in these camps where they were basically put to work and weren't allowed to ever leave. So this is, very much of that kind of dystopian vibe. So they're trapped kind of like Maze Runner, and they're factioned kind of like Divergent, and that they all have different capabilities. And well, I guess the Hunger Games side of it is the fight for survival, and that's in all of them as well. And the fact that Rue is in the movie. But yeah, so highly recommend. I haven't read this series since I was like 12, 13, so I don't know how it's going to read I don't know if it's going to read like a YA, but I very much enjoyed these books, so I would highly recommend. And the fourth one is The Darkest Legacy, which is like a sequel. It's, you know, it's a legacy one, so that was after. I do have that book, but I haven't read that one. I've just read the main three, which is The Darkest Minds, Never Fade, and In the Afterlight. But I very much liked those, so yes. This is not real, by the way. I got this from Primark, it was £10. I just drink ridiculous amounts of water, so there you go. Just checking that we're still recording and nothing else has given up on me. Next is Never Kiss Your Roomie by Philene Harms. This is a book about, it's a young adult sapphic romance about Evelyn and Noelle. Evelyn gets sent to this boarding school. Noelle's already there. They become roommates. Well, they're like in the same dorm. And Noelle is tall, she's gorgeous, she's confident, she's bisexual, and Evelyn is basically in awe of Noelle and wants to get closer to her, wants to get to know her, but she's very intimidated by her. And this is basically about the two of them getting to know each other, getting to know themselves, and there's also kind of like a gossip girl at their school. Like at the boarding school, there's some sort of online anonymous person who's posting things, so that also adds to it. I really liked this book. This is a yes for me. However, there is a Wattpad sticker on the back. Shoot me. I enjoyed it, so yeah, probably came from Wattpad, but haven't we all come from Wattpad at some point in our lives? So yes. Next is This Is How You Lose the Time War. This is by Max Gladstone and Amal El-Motar. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, I apologise. But I loved this book. This is a yes for me. This is a yes for you as well. You need to read it. You will like it. This book is another sapphic romance. So there's a time war. So you have to lose the time war. So the time war is happening and there's an agent on either side. So there's red and there's blue, and they are obviously supposed to be against each other, and it's basically about their relationship during the war, and they keep trying to kind of outdo one another, always be one step ahead of one another, and then they start leaving little messages for one another, and it just seems to grow from there. But it's the middle of a time war. They're agents for opposing sides. If they were found out to be speaking to each other or communicating in any way, they'd both be killed. Will they be able to defeat the odds and be together, or will they be found out and be killed? Find out and read the book. Very good. Yes. Next one, A Thousand Splendid Suns by Khaled Hosseini. I cannot speak about this book enough. This book is so good. It's so important, and with everything that's going on in the world right now, politics-wise, it's so important to be reading books like this, and books like The Darkest Minds, where it's set in America and something happens and the government starts abusing its power to keep the general population contained and to control XYZ. It's very important to be reading books like this so that you understand that this kind of stuff is not just, oh, some fictional fantasy land. This stuff is based on real stuff. Like, this stuff happens. And even like fantasy novels that you're reading where it's like, I don't know, like ACOTAR, like Game of Thrones, like all of that stuff is political. Whenever there's a war between two sides, and war is politics. War is politics. If you don't think it is, go back to school. Reading is political. Many of the books you read are political, and you may not realise it, but they are. And so it's really important to be reading books that will open our eyes to what is happening around us. You might read a book and you might think, oh, this isn't really a political book. It's not really about politicians or it's not about the government, it doesn't matter, it's not about the government. You might be reading XYZ and you might be thinking, oh, actually, that kind of applies to what's happening here in some way. Yeah, authors put that stuff in there. Reading is political. There's a book ban that's going to go into effect in America because of Trump. Why do you think that is? It's because he wants to keep the general public pliant and clueless, and knowledge is power. It is. It really, really is. And everyone who voted for Trump clearly had absolutely no knowledge of anything because they voted for Trump. So, keep reading stuff like this. Knowledge is power. A Thousand Splendid Suns by Khaled Hosseini is about a young girl, Mariam, in Afghanistan, who is the result of a rich man's affair with his maid. So Mariam and her mother are sent to live up on a hill in like a little hut because she's the illegitimate child of this rich man and it's a disgrace and yada yada yada. So she never really sees her dad and she just lives with her kind of crazy-ish mom in a hut on a mountain. Doesn't really see or speak to people because she has to stay hidden away. And then at the age of 15, Mariam gets shipped off to Kabul to marry some gross old man at the age of 15, and he's like 50 something. Ew. Again, real life. This stuff happens in real life. So then basically it's about Mariam's kind of experience as a woman, as a young girl in Afghanistan, as then a woman in Afghanistan as she grows up. It's her experience of what a marriage is, and what a marriage is expected to be in Afghanistan, which is very important. And then you jump a couple of decades and Mariam's then like in her 40s, and it's about a young girl, Layla, who lives in Kabul. And Layla's like 14, lives with her mum and dad, and over the course of those decades that were jumped, the Taliban have invaded further and further and further into Afghanistan and have made their way into Kabul, where Layla lives with her mum and dad. And this is then about basically the Taliban rule and how that came into an effect and the perspective of that from a 14-year-old girl's perspective and the consequences. And Mariam and Layla's lives intersect, and so this whole book is basically just about being a woman in Afghanistan and experiencing life under Taliban law. And you know, it's awful. It is awful. And the stuff in here and the stuff once you get that time jump, once the Taliban have completely invaded Kabul, the laws that they bring into effect, it's not even as bad as it is now. This is to be set in like, I think it was the 70s, maybe the 80s, and it's so much worse now. So we need to keep talking about things like these because the Taliban are determined to make being a woman as illegal as possible in Afghanistan. And people like Khaled Hosseini, who have seen things firsthand, who know what the experience is like, who then write books like this so that there's a fictionalized way to get this information out to people, to get people to understand what is happening. This is so, so important. So do not stop reading books like these because that is what these governments, that is what these people want you to do. They want you to stop reading things like these, stop watching things about it. They want you to just be ignorance is bliss and let's not do anything, okay? So yes, 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 these are important. That's a very good book. I very much enjoyed that. Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. This book I loved. If you haven't heard of Six of Crows, have you been living under a rock? Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo is set in the Grishaverse, or Grishaverse, however you want to pronounce it. And this is a universe of books. There's 3 separate series at the moment. There's Six of Crows duology, Shadow and Bone series, and the King of Scars, I want to say. which I also own but haven't read, and I have read this duology. This is a big fat yes. This book is about this guy Kaz Brekker, who's like a deadly thief, and he basically gets given this mission to break into the Ice Court, which is basically impossible, and retrieve a hostage who has knowledge of things. And so Kaz builds a team, a ragtag team of all these random people who don't fit into society, who escaped one situation or another, or who just have a particular skill set. And he basically builds a team to break into the Ice Court with him and retrieve this hostage. And it's so good. It's so good. The world building is amazing. You know, I will say, because this is the only duology I've read in this universe, and a lot of people have said you shouldn't read this one first because you need to know about the world, and that the other series have a little bit more world building that is useful for when you read Six of Crows. And while I'm sure that's true, I haven't read any of the other series and I still loved Six of Crows. So if you're put off by the thought of having to read all of these ones before you can get to Six of Crows, you don't have to. You can just read the Six of Crows duology. I have deeply enjoyed this duology, and I will be reading the rest of them because I love this author and I absolutely adored this series. But I haven't yet, and I still understood this book and loved it. So you can just read that one. So big fat yes, and it's a very chunky book. So really carve some time out for that. And the second one's just as chunky. Pride and Prejudice. If you don't know who Pride and Prejudice is by, Pride and Prejudice by our Queen Mother, Jane Austen. This is such a good book. Obviously, you all know what Pride and Prejudice is about, but Pride and Prejudice is so good. This one's very floppy. I kind of want to buy another version of it because I know there's some that do really pretty versions, or even like, you know, the Penguin hardback ones that are really pretty in Waterstones. But then I feel like if I was going to buy that one of Pride and Prejudice, I'd have to buy like all of them, like get the collection. I absolutely loved this book. I had to do it for A-level English literature and it was so good. It was so good. Controversial. Not my favourite of the classics that I've read, and I've not read many. I would have to say my favourite would be Emma. Such a good book. Emma is so funny. Like, sorry, she was ahead of her time. She's a diva. Obsessed with her. If you want to read a book about the original diva, read Emma. But this book is seriously so good. Pride and Prejudice is a big fat yes. The Maid by Nita Prose, and this for me is a no. Don't cancel me, okay? Reading is subjective, let's remember that. This one's a no. I DNF'd it. I'm not even gonna lie to you. I DNF'd it, and it wasn't doing it for me. I couldn't get into it. It was not for me. I'm sure it's very good. I've heard a lot of good things, but she's not for me. The Fiance Farce. This is by Alexandria Bellefleur. Where it stop? Bellefleur or Bellflower? Ooh, I don't know. Okay. Anyway, Fiance Farce. Iconic. I bought this in Affleck's. Is it in Affleck's? Yeah, in Affleck's in Manchester. There's a big gay shop there, and yeah, they sell some gay books. So I went and bought some gay books. Fiance Farce, so good. Fake engagement trope. Yes. It's basically about Tansy and Gemma. So Tansy runs a bookstore. It's her family's bookstore, and she is terrible at romance. She's gay, and all of her family are constantly nagging her, when are you going to get a girlfriend? When are you going to get a girlfriend? When are you going to get a girlfriend? And so she's like, oh, like, did I not tell you? I have a girlfriend. And just completely invents that she's dating this woman, Gemma, who's a model. And Gemma's real. She's a real person. She's a real model. She's the black sheep of a very rich family. And basically her family own a publishing company. She wants to run the publishing company. She wants to inherit it, but they're all like, no, you're too unstable, you're not reliable enough, yada yada yada, you're the wild child. So when their paths cross, Tansy and Gemma is like, hey, do you know what? Let's pretend to be engaged. My family will see that I've settled down. They'll give me the publishing company. It's my dream come true. Your family will see that you're with someone and they'll stop bothering you. Win-win. I loved this book. I thought it was so funny. It was so good. Love a sapphic romance. So yes. And then we have Payback's a Witch by Lana Harper. I loved this book. This is another sapphic one. I didn't even know this was going to be sapphic until I started reading it. And then I was like, oh wait. Slay. So anyway, yes. Payback's a Witch is about Emmy Harlow, who is from Thistlegrove, which is a tiny town that has multiple covens of witches. And her surname is Harlow, so she is part of the Harlows, which are one of the big families in this town. There's like 3 or 4 main families that are like the main covens. And her best friend is Lyndon Thorne, part of the Thorne family, who are one of the main families. So you've got the Harlows, the Thornes, the Avmarovs, and the Blackmores. The Blackmores basically run the town. There's like a kind of gauntlet, very much, you know, in Harry Potter, Goblet of Fire, that kind of vibe. Very much Goblet of Fire kind of vibe. And it's between these 4 families. Every year, someone from the family competes. And every year, the Blackmores win. They're the richest. They win every year. And basically, whoever wins, they kind of get a magical boost for the year. So the Blackmores have won every single year. No one's ever stood a chance. And they have basically dominated the kind of tourist revenue in the town, and that's what their town's main export is in. They're like a witchy town, so they get a lot of tourism around like autumn, fall. And so basically Emmy lives in Chicago. She doesn't live in Thistlegrove anymore, and when you leave Thistlegrove you don't really have access to your magic, so she hasn't used her magic in years. She doesn't live in Thistlegrove anymore, and she comes back for this big gauntlet because the Harlows are typically the ones who like kind of host it, so it's Emmy's time to kind of host this kind of gauntlet. And she had never gone back home since she was like 18 because she dated Gareth Blackmore of the Blackmores, as previously stated, and he was basically gross and disgusting, and they broke up, very messy. She was traumatized, so she left and never came back. Then she comes home, and basically one of the Avmarov daughters, and Lyndon Thorne, who's Emmy's best friend, they all form an alliance to get back at Gareth Blackmore. So Gareth thinks, so he's in this like gauntlet, he's the one representing his family this year, and the girlies get together, and the girlies are like, this man's not about to win. He's a gross human being. He needs to be taken down a peg or 20. Let's form an alliance. And so that's what they do. So this book is, it's about the girlies forming an alliance and taking down a man. And they're all witches, and it's sapphic. What more could you want? Quite literally, what more could you want? And there's like maybe 4 books in this series. And I am currently reading the second one, From Bad to Cursed, which is about the Avmarov girl in this book, her sister, Isadora. But yeah, so very much a yes, very good. Last but not least, one of my favourite books of all time, Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. Oh my god. I really cannot say enough about this book. I absolutely love it. It's a duology. Second book is Ruthless Vows. I have the hardback version of the second book as well. I did not read this book. I listened to it on audio, and I really am not an audiobook girly, but the woman who narrated these books, love it. Love her voice. It's giving everything. So Divine Rivals is about these two writers, Roman and Iris, and they both work for the same newspaper, and they're basically rivals. They're both trying to fight for this like columnist job, and there is a war going on. The war is the humans fighting the war, but they're each on the side of a god. So there's like this female goddess, I suppose. And she has, can't remember what her name is, but anyway, she has her army fighting for her, which are the good guys basically, and then there's this evil male god, and he's got his army fighting for him. And Iris's brother is out at war, and basically Iris ends up going to be a war correspondent, and she goes to the front lines to report on the war because she's trying to find her brother. And this is basically about both of them being writers, and Iris has a magical typewriter, which sounds ridiculous when I say it, but it's well written. I'm just not saying it the right way. But basically she has a magical typewriter where she writes letters, and she sticks them under the door in her wardrobe, and the letters disappear. And she starts getting letters back, and she thinks they're from her brother, but they're not. I wonder who they could be from. And basically she is having this rivalry with Roman. She's forming a bond with this person who she's writing letters to, and she's going out to war to try and find her brother. And yeah, so it's very much romance, enemies to lovers vibes, and it's so good. It's just so good. I can't say enough about this book. I absolutely love it. And look how pretty this is, and it's so big. Look at that. I'm sorry. She's so gorgeous. She's so beautiful. Absolutely obsessed. I got this as a gift, actually. I think it was a birthday present. So thank you to my girlies who got me this. But yeah, yes, and yes. Cannot say enough about these books. Absolutely obsessed. That's our last one, and that's a yes. So yeah, basically, those are all the physical books that I keep in my room that I have read. I will do another yes no maybe with probably Kindle books that I've read, although to be fair, that would take me years and years to get through them all, but I can pick a few. Let me know if you've read any of these and if they are a yes no or maybe for you. And just keep reading, guys. Whatever, no matter what genre you're reading, no matter whether it's fiction or non-fiction, just keep reading, don't stop. And that's basically it for today. So thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.